grace leading us, and love is all we'll ever trust. Yeah, no, I don't wanna waste what's left. And on we'll go, through the wastelands, through the highways, till my shadow turns to sun rays. And on we'll go, through the wastelands, through the highways, and on we'll go.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us tonight. Welcome to Sign of the Times. I want to thank you for taking time. I had to clean my glasses because this has been a rough week, not just for myself, but I'm sure for so many, but we made it through. And this is still another day, another week, another month, another moment that our good Lord has given us, and we're going to be happy in it. Thank you for joining us for what I consider one of the most special shows because it's been a requested show. My heart's desire, my goal is to come to you on a regular basis and talk about the things that you want to talk about. Before we get into our show tonight, I want to remind you to be safe, be strong, be smart. Wear your mask, use your hand sanitizer, protect yourself. I wanted to just put it out there. We've already written it, but I want to verbally say that anything that we show tonight is not for profit or not for gain, but just for our benefit to be better. Tonight is a special show, and I'm going to get right to my guest tonight. I've used so much of this over the past few days. I wanted to talk about what you all wanted to talk about, which is grief. We're in a time, as if you've seen any of my posts, you know that I lost a dear, not even a friend, someone that's closer than a family member. I call him my pastor father. When I was a young man in the streets of Philadelphia, just running around crazy, had no idea where I was going, Donald D. Otterbridge grabbed me from the street, grabbed my friends, Dwayne and Ralph and Jimmy and Alan, and just took us in, and took his own sons, Keith and Donnie, and just says, y'all stand back, let me mentor and mold these young men into men. And so when I received the word on Wednesday night that he had gone home to be with the Lord, it really felt like something inside of me just snapped. And so we've all been dealing with grief. There's some of you that are watching tonight that you've been struggling with grief. You've lost your loved ones. You lost your mom. You lost your dad. You lost, children. It's just a rough situation. It's a fact of life. And let me say this before we bring our guest on. There's no right way to grieve. There's no one right way. If people tell you, well, you know, you should be over it by now, or you shouldn't cry. Maybe you didn't have the same relationship that we have. And so tonight we're going to dedicate this show, if you all don't mind, to my pops, my father, and my brother Ralph is on here. I was just talking to my daughter today, telling some stories of how Ralph Jones, my dear brother, his nickname was Batman because Pastor Otterbridge took him off the street. Ralph walked around. He's going to get me, but I'm just going to tell all his business. Ralph didn't need a gun. He didn't need a knife. Ralph had a baseball bat, and his nickname was Batman. And Ralph went from the street corner to the church, sitting in church. We had great times in church. We played ball together. We were thump and bump. I remember there's an old saying in church, when you're sitting in church and someone yells out, "What's the matter with Jesus?" You're supposed to say, "He's all right." Ralph didn't know. So when they yelled out, "What's the matter with Jesus?" Ralph said, "Nothing." And I'm saying, man, that ain't what you say. Man, we lost our pops this week, but guess what? We're better men for it. We're better men, and now we have a responsibility to mentor the next generation. Listen, this show is brought to you tonight by a couple of entities, Limitless Entertainment Television. I want to thank those of you that are watching on our Facebook channel. Hit the like, share button, tag someone, do a watch party, and let it play while you're doing your thing. I want to thank those of you that are watching on YouTube. Hit the subscribe button, hit that like button, do something with it, whatever it is. Limitless Entertainment. We're also live tonight on our Roku station all around the world. Thank you for that. Also brought to you tonight by one of our greatest sponsors, Sly's Famous Diner, located at 801 East Broad Avenue in Rockingham, North Carolina. I tell you about Sly's Family Diner every time. They got the most special anointed ribs that you ever ate. I'm telling you, they take their ribs and they sauce them down and they oil them down. They dip it over in anointed oil. and then they pray over and they lift it up and they fast over and they lay hands for 7 days and put it in the oven. I'm telling you, it's the best tasting ribs and collard greens that you ever want to eat, and yams and all of that good stuff. They even got squash. So if you're in the Charlotte, Rockingham area, go down to Sly's famous diner and hit them up and tell them you saw and heard about it right here on Sign of the Times. The reason why they're such one of our great sponsors is because the owners, the Huffs, Linda and DeMarcus, who was on this show, they are still dealing with grief. And we're going to talk about that. So that being said, everyone, my guest tonight is a regular on here. He always comes on the show, and he comes on here a regular basis. Dr. Stephen Gardner, thank you for joining us, my brother. The difference is normally when Dr. Gardner is on here, we're talking about theological concepts, or the last few times that he's been on, we were talking about racial injustices and things like that, because Dr. Gardner, what I appreciate and admire about him is that he is what I call a legitimate doctor. He's got that title doctor, but he did not get his doctorate from the Walmart School of Theology in the back corner over in the gardening section. He has his PhD. He has an earned doctorate in social injustice. And so he knows what he's talking about. This young man knows what he's talking about. And so we're not going to talk so much Bible tonight, as he is also he is a grief counselor. He has clients all over the country. And so when I put the call out, I didn't want to get on here and just talk about grief from my experience. I wanted someone that knows what they're talking about. And my dear friend said, bro, I got you. And I appreciate him. I thank you. You can tell someone knows what they're talking about when they're doing their interview and they reach for their cup of tea or coffee. That means I got it going on. Thank you for joining us, Doc.
All right. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Doc, before we get in it, I want to show this clip. We kind of talked before. There are different stages of grief. There's the actual loss of a loved one. I was sharing with one of my problems with losing my pastor this week is that there's some people that subconsciously, when I lost my mom, I knew it was about to happen. You get the doctor's report, you know that she's ill, you know she's struggling with this. But then there's some people that I think subconsciously, you don't think they're ever going to go away. And it just happens and you're caught off guard, and that's what happens. Let's look, if you don't mind, Doc, can we look at this clip first? Or you want to look at it later, or you?
No, that clip is, let's do it with the clip first.
All right, here's a clip, ladies and gentlemen, from a popular show back in the 70s that if you're over 40, you have to know, All in the Family, with Archie Bunker, Archie and Edith. Now, Archie and Edith, they went at it. He called her dingbat, and she would run around screaming, and you would think that. But here's a clip from after Edith passed away. Edith passed away, and Archie came to the realization, and here is grief at its greatest moment for us. And I think most of us can associate with what Archie's going through. Let's look at this clip, and we'll come back, and we'll talk about this with Dr. Gardner.
She was the one who was supposed to...
Let me start this over. I think we were looking at, here it is.
You know, I was supposed to be the first one to go. I always used to kid you. Are you going first? You know I never meant none of that. And that morning when you was laying there, I was shaking you, yelling at you to go down and fix my breakfast. I didn't know. You had no right to leave me that way. Without giving me just one more chance to say I love you.
Doc, I want to stop it right there. He talks to the little girl. How many of us, I mean, that part of that clip, and again, those of you that are watching, please, if you want to ask Dr. Gardner a question, please put it in the comment section, and the comments we can actually have them up here so that we can talk to Dr. Gardner. Dr. Gardner, the part of that clip that was so touching to me was when he made the comment. He said, you shouldn't have left me without giving me an opportunity to say one more time that I love you. I mean, to me, that's grief at its core. That when we lose someone, we want to say, I've said this several times, even this week, and that's when the tears start flowing. When you say, if I just had 10 seconds more, you shouldn't have left me without, what do you think about that in that clip?
Well, I mean, that's part of the bargaining piece. There's some people refer to, they use Kubler-Ross's, and that's a famous name that's out there in grief. And one of those pieces in Kubler-Ross's matrix, as it were, in terms of grief, was bargaining. Wanting that extra chance, wanting to be able to have that extra time. I think one of the challenges that we have in our society, and that is, we live in a society that does not include grief and the experience of grief as part of the life cycle. I think it ought to be taught in school, rather than for it to just wait for it to happen. You know what I'm saying? And then you get these barrage of emotions, in which we'll talk about some of that stuff. But I think that if we would include grief as part of the life cycle, which means life, death, then grief, then I think that people might be more prepared to be able to express that. The other part of that piece that we see there in the video is the fact that he wanted that extra chance. In my experience, everybody wants, if I just had a little bit more time with that person. Or we can even talk about the complications of COVID. I don't want to get ahead, but we all want more time with that person. We all have, I wish I could have, would have, should have. We all have moments that we regret, or that we wish we had said something. Mm-hmm. And I got my own personal story to tell about that. And I think that the expression that he had brings in two dynamics that I really want to introduce grief to us. You got the idea of grief, and you got the idea of mourning. Now, grief is the internal feelings caused by the loss. They're private, and they're unique to every person, and oftentimes they're uncontrollable. So what am I saying? There are times that that we may, in our heart, have, like you said, your heart was torn out, and then you may find yourself not being able to control the tears. not being able to compartmentalize, anything. You just got to give into it. You got to let it have its place. We're not taught that. We're taught got to be strong.
Right.
Male. Yeah, male. Got to be strong. Yeah. And you find out that that's hogwash because the real strength, and I'll say this to every man, and I learned this from my own experience, the real strength is having the courage to be vulnerable and open and to share your feelings. That's more courage and more strength than you realize we have. But we're not supposed to keep it all bottled in. But the other part of that, it brings up another word that's called mourning. And mourning is that external expression of loss. It's influenced by social and cultural normatives, and you can control that. One way of expressing loss, we ought to have the funeral. Well, you got pretty much a control there, but you can't control that person at the funeral who may fall out or fall over. You know what I mean? And we all got them. And I'm just keeping it real. That person is overwhelmed by their grief. As an intro, is that kind of what you want?
So what you're saying is there's an old saying that person that's falling in the casket, rocking it and going, they're the ones that probably treated them the worst. I mean, it's not always the case, but
it's not always the case. But for you to say that, and I can identify with that, there's something that's normalized that we share in our African American experience.
We do have one comment that said that my husband passed away. Donna Taylor said my husband passed away 9 months ago, and I'm thankful that he and I began to talk about death because he knew. So we got a chance to say what we needed to say. I miss him, but I said what I need. Now, is that rare? Is that something that even then a person may say, I said all of my goodbyes, but then later on you're saying, but I still would like to have a few more moments to,
I think, and I really appreciate you being, sharing that with us. The thing of it is that even if we've said all our goodbyes, it's still not enough because the power of love, wants the presence of that person to always be there. In fact, I've learned that grief is love unfinished. And so, you continue to love that person, even though that their physical presence is not here. So it's never enough. You always want to say something else. You always want that extra moment that you have with them. But I do think that it's monumental, and I commend you you've had this kind of conversation. You've had this kind of dialogue with the person that you love. And you've had this, and you were prepared for it. Let me say something about that, because I think, in my experience, I've seen this happen as well, that all this information that you began to garner about loss and about getting prepared, you're grieving then,
That's a good point, Doc. That's a good point.
When you know that, there's a timetable upon their mortality, when you know that they're in the COVID unit and their stats are falling, or when you just know and you've been given this information and it may take months, that's called anticipatory grief.
Okay.
That's what it's called. It's called anticipatory. You're grieving and the person is still present. However, the moment that person leaves, you shift from anticipatory grief to the other kind of grief, to the kind of grief that we see witnessed in the video. And now it doesn't matter how much you knew, it doesn't matter how prepared you thought you were. Nobody ever prepared.
Right.
And their loved one is no longer here.
I went through that with my mom. You're thinking, oh boy, this is what it's going to be like, and you prepare. But when it actually, Doc, I hate to. I don't have my can of worms because it's not that kind of show. But I may be opening one and dealing with people's concepts, their theology. But I want to say something. I don't mean to be offensive because I just want to get it out there. We need to talk about this. What happens? Is it true do we handle grief when I know someone close to me has passed and I'm hurting? And in that initial stage of grief, I start to say, I'm good because she came to my bedside last night and sat with me, or I saw them, I could feel their presence. Is it in essence an actual event, or is that a part of our coping mechanism for grief?
Well, I think that it is part of our coping mechanism for grief, and I think that we should allow people to do that.
Right. Again, there's no formula for how to handle it.
No, it's no formula for how to handle it. I think the worst thing you can do is to try to, give this person a bunch of scriptures from your worldview to try to scripture it away. No, let that person feel what they're feeling. Let that person express what they're expressing, because it doesn't matter what you say to them. It doesn't matter if you hear these common cliches, and I try to avoid them. I really try to avoid cliches because people get bombarded with that because, people that haven't had a loss, they feel like this is the thing that they need to say. I'm sorry for your loss.
Yeah.
They got on angel's wings.
Yeah.
They're no longer hurting. They're in a better place. Yeah. And from the person that's saying that to the griever, they may feel like that they're offering, the appropriate amount of condolences, and that maybe those kind of words would make that person feel better. The truth is, they're not dealing with any of those ideas. They're dealing with the fact that their loved one is not here.
Right.
And so,
anything I can do for you, just let me know.
That's it.
And can I just be honest, Doc? It's just you and I. No one's watching. It's just you and I. Can I just be honest? When they tell me it's anything I can do for you, I want to say, yeah, leave me alone.
And the thing about it is that you have the right, to say that. In fact, as a resource that people can Google, and you can Google this resource. It's called Mourner's Bill of Rights, MOURNERS Bill of Rights, and it's by someone that's renowned in this particular field of grief. Mm-hmm. But Google Mourner's Bill of Rights, it will say in there that you have the right to express your grief however you want to express it. Mm-hmm. I think that sometimes religion causes more of a problem than it does a solution. Now, I know that probably would turn, it does.
Because it's so generalized and so it's so traditional is the word. Like you just said, we say the same thing to everyone. Now I just lost a loved one. Boom, you got 3 praying. You're in my prayers and condolences. What is the condolences? Do people even know what that means?
Well, no, I think that we just kind of follow tradition. Well, that's what's expected. Right. And so expectations do work both ways. On one hand, those expectations, you can expect to offer condolences, but on the other hand, we should expect the person to express their grief however they want to grieve, and not to be judged because something comes out of their mouth that might be a polysyllable.
And that's what my friend Ralph Batman, he just put up here, everyone does not grieve the same, and they should be allowed to grieve. So are you saying that if I lose a loved one and I want to and I want to take a bottle of whatever and turn up and run outside and say, yeah, he's gone, yeah, then I have that right to do that.
You have that right. And we need to allow people to express their grief in the way that they feel. But a lot of times people suppress their grief because of the expectations maybe the church has on you, or the expectation that your family has on you, mm-hmm. or the expectation that your friends or society has on you. And so you're not free to grieve. Mm-hmm. One of the things that best helps people in that is the idea of either grief counseling or some kind of grief support group. Mm-hmm. Because grief counseling allows you in one aspect to have a personalized tour guide. I mean, even though I do this professionally, You know, I consider myself, when I'm sitting with a client or Zooming with a client, I'm a tour guide. Grief is behind the wheel.
Mhm.
You've already paid the fare, the door's locked, you can't get out, you don't know, and they're just driving erratically. They need to have someone like the Holy Spirit, if you want me to use a religious emblem,
Mhm.
paraclete, someone that's coming alongside, not to help, not to just, quote scripture, not to, any of this guy, but just someone that, that is empathetic. Not, oh, I'm sorry that this happened to you. Oh boy, I feel sorry for you. No, they need someone that can actually feel what you feel, or at least ask questions about how can I help, like you said earlier.
I'm gonna get back to this question that Miss Carter. I just pulled down because you get older. When you get a thought, you got to get it out. As a matter of fact, our sponsor, Sly's Famous Diner. I want to ask this question, Doc. Can people not helping you add to your grief? Now, let me explain what I mean by that. In the case with Sly's Famous Diner in Rockingham, the young man that owns it, that's running, is young. I think he's about 24 years old. His brother Sly was taken away from us far too early, and the young man was just in depression, hurting, grieving over his brother. He said he was riding to the beach with the gun on the front seat, going to just end his life. And just before that happened, he can hear his mom talking about the things that she taught him. And to make a long story short, he turned that tragic situation into opening a diner that is one of the hottest, that's feeding the homeless. For Thanksgiving, we partnered with them and fed 100 homeless people, gave away clothes to the community. And here's my point. Everyone's talking about DeMarcus because he lost his brother. Mom sits back and she's, supportive of her son, and yet thinking, wait a minute, everyone seems to forget I lost my baby. So can neglect add to, yeah, bro, you lost your brother and we know you're hurting, but she lost her son.
Yeah.
Are there situations where we look at one person as losing someone and we forget about the others?
Absolutely. And I think is that we're just really not taught, we put grief over here, and when it happens, we just kind of deal with it. Where if it's included, then I think that we have better responses. Let me give you an example about how people can hurt and how you can help that's grieving. Sometimes people see you and they see you cooped up in the house. And I'm gonna come back to answer your question, but they see you cooped up in the house. They want you to get out. They want you to do this. And you don't want to do any of those things. You just want to stay in your pajamas. You just want to stay at home, and you don't want to be bothered with people, but you don't want to offend folk either. But you don't want to be bothered with folk because of other people, And so one way to do that is that people are not they're not mind readers, and so it is to tell people this. Even if they invite you to do something, you really don't want to do it, and you know why you don't want to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Say, look, this is the way I am right now. I'm not going to always be like this, but this is what you can expect from me. So don't take my action or inaction personally. On the other hand, this is what I like to expect from you. And so what you basically have told that person is that, number one, look, I need space to be in my feelings. And that's exactly what this is about.
Mm-hmm.
Being in your feelings. They ain't nobody else's, they're yours. Be in your feelings and just kind of be left alone. And this is how you can support me in this.
Mm-hmm.
That's one way of looking at that. The overlooked part happens a lot of times. I've seen people, it's about the person who's most celebrated maybe in that particular social order. The mama lost her son, but homie lost his brother.
Right.
So she's overlooked because, no one thinks of that because of what the relationships were. Maybe they weren't more tied to that, tied to the son than they were tied to the mama. But I think that we ought to be
Or do they assume that mama, because mama is mama, that she's strong, and we hear the story about how the son almost went off a cliff, that we're thinking, yeah, son, but because mama would handle probably like me, just sit back quietly, that she's okay, not realizing that she needs support.
She needs support too. And the thing about it is, so in the best approach that a community can have, and we always heard the adage, it takes a whole village to raise a child.
Right.
It takes a whole village to comfort a family in grief. You got to have this wraparound effect. Who all is infected? Who all is empowered? Who all is impacted? In fact, one of the things that I've done is that when there's been maybe a parental loss, the loss of a matriarch or a patriarch in the family, and you got, or maybe the loss of a husband or spouse, and you got family members. What I try to do is that in the initial session that I am with the family is to try to get as many of those people in front of me, whether it be in front of a Zoom or before we had safe spacing, face to face, and kind of share with them what they can expect from one of them, what they can expect from each other, and what they can expect from themselves, and how to best support one another. Because why? Their portrait of their family portrait has been fractured. Mm-hmm. And now they're learning to pick up the pieces. And everybody is grieving differently based upon the relationship and also the dynamics of that person's personality. So on the one hand, you may have people in the family that start to judge another family member because they're not grieving like you. There's some people that are task-oriented grievers. And these are people that got to stay busy, or they choose to be busy. Where you got a person that's a feeling oriented griever, they're going to react emotionally. And when they see someone that's staying busy, they say, well, he's in denial. Mm-hmm. It's not the case. Everybody's grieving the best as they know how. And, and can there be some overboard, that there might be avoidance? I think that if we have the place to have the conversation, then we can empathetically heal together, and maybe we can talk about that. But I think sometimes people will try to avoid it and push it under the rug. Can I tell you a personal story? Can I?
Sure.
Yeah, I'll tell you mine. Here's my personal story, because it's this story that I'm going to tell you that I went from loss to empowerment. Now, it doesn't happen to everybody the same way, but this is what happened to me. I was the only child, Bishop. I was the only child. I have no brothers, no sisters. I was in high school. I was a senior. And I was sitting down and I was talking to my parents, and I told my parents, I'm going to go into the military and I'm going to make a better man of myself. That was my commitment to them. On my 18th birthday, I left out. 3 days later, the Red Cross comes to boot camp where I was at, and they said, Private Gardner, you're going to have to go back home because your mom just passed away. Now imagine that, 18 years old, just had a birthday, just made that commitment, and now all of a sudden, my mom's gone and I'm in the military. And so I came back, and I'll be the first to tell you that I didn't have access to counseling or anything like that, and I wasn't in the field. And so I had two things that were coming at me. I had the military saying, you need to handle business and get back here. And on the other hand, I had this idea that you got to be strong. You can't show any emotion. You got to let people know I got this. And I didn't grieve appropriately. I will tell you that, it was rough. And so I even went to my mom's funeral. I had my uniform on, didn't shed any tears. Got to be strong. When I got back to boot camp, I started acting out in aberrant behavior. I started getting in trouble in the military. That's the wrong thing to be doing. Yeah. Is getting in trouble in the military. I was just aberrant behavior. And I happened to have a sergeant pull me aside and they said, you're acting the way you're acting because you lost your mother. And that's basically all that he said, but it was enough for me to try to get it together. Now, let me say this. It was that experience about a year after my mom's passing is where I had one of the most profound mystical experiences that I could have ever imagined, about a year after she'd gone. And I was in the military, and I've been out in the village, and I came in and I was opening the door of my back door, and I heard a voice that spoke to me just as profoundly, saying, I love you and I'm trying to help you. As if I didn't have the closure that I wanted to have with my mom. And it was those words, but it sounded like my mother. Man, I'm telling you, about 3-4 weeks after that, I'm finding myself down there at the altar. Are you following what I'm saying? I'm giving my life to Jesus. And then I said, well, I'll be a good Christian, but I ain't going to be no preacher. Don't ever tell the Lord what you won't do.
Yeah, you're right.
And so me making a better man of myself is the evolution of what you see today. Because what I was able to do through the passing of my mother is what one of the things that people go through is meaning making. I was able to draw meaning as what this passing meant to me. And I had an aha moment one day, and I was really reflecting on it. And it simply came to me just like this. She finished her job. The 18 years that I had her, she gave me all the contribution, all the things that I needed so that I could keep the words that I gave to both of them before I left for the military and before she passed away. And she wasn't sick. It just like that.
Well, Doc, that's powerful. And it's sort of, I had a question, I didn't know how to ask it, but after hearing that, now I know how to ask it. It makes sense. You said that it gave you a sense of meaning.
Yes.
You accomplished, it gave you, that was because that was your mom. Mm-hmm. Is there a difference in grief? Is there a difference? Because I feel like, my mother passed away, my biological mother. My mother that adopted me passed away in 2011. My biological mother passed away a couple of days before Christmas this past year. And each time people would say, "You okay?" "Yeah, I'm fine." And they said, "Well, how are you making it?" Because I realized that my mother leaving, it's part of the cycle of life. They go, we step up. You grieve is part of you that's grieving because you know that now I'm becoming them. Mm-hmm. So now that they're gone, I'm up here where they are, my children. But Doc, talk to us about, when your mom dies, you can say fulfillment. She did all she could to get me to this place. They raised me up. When my dad died, my father dies. He did all he could to get me to this place. What about, Doc, when it's your child?
Wow.
Yeah, the whole script flips.
The whole script flips.
It's unnatural. What movie was that? John Q. When John Q said, I'm determined, my son's, I'm not going to bury my son. My son's going to bury me.
Right. The loss of a child is probably one of the most daunting and inundating experience that a person can really go through, because the question that the statement that's there is that, well, a mother or father is not supposed to bury their son or daughter. Mm-hmm. They're supposed to always, and so that becomes the kind of grief that people work through. And a lot of times what happens, and I'm an advocate for counseling, and there you find Linda saying that the loss of a child is the worst pain ever.
If I can interrupt you,
sure.
That's who we were talking to. She probably just jumped on, but we spent half the show talking about her situation. That's the mother that runs Sly's Famous Diner that we were talking about. When she said she lost a child, this is who we were talking about.
Okay. And so, I mean, it's all these things go through your mind about what was supposed to take place. And here's one that I think that we as people of faith need to allow other people of faith to do, is to vent their anger towards about God or towards God.
Wow.
God is too big to be for you to be so mad that he can't handle it.
Wow, that's good. Wow. Wow, that is amazing. That is powerful. He's too big that he can't handle your anger.
Yeah. You know,
and if the truth be told, we don't want to say it because we get so spiritual that we don't want to say it. But the truth be told, we get mad. Like, God, how could you do this?
How could you do it? You know, how could you do it? And you know what, man? Think about that. And everybody that's a person of faith that has lost someone, everybody's saying the same thing. How could you do it? You know, and so it's like we've got to realize that you have to let people express their anger, even if their anger is toward God. Don't give them no scripture. Don't give them no verse. Let them vent, you know, and because it's good for them. Because let me tell you, that anger will shift.
Yes.
I've seen the anger move from God to the person that left. You don't left me back here with all this stuff, like we saw there in the video. You don't left me back here. Then it'll shift again. Now you're mad at yourself.
Right.
Now you're feeling regret. You know, and so or it shifts another time. Those folk at the medical facility should have caught this by now.
Right.
So, you know, anger becomes a scapegoat and it's a moving target. And we got to allow it and know that it's okay to not be okay.
Right.
Validate their feelings. Don't try to fix them. Because guess what? You can't fix grief.
Right. Right. And like Mildred Cruz said, it's not like you hiding it from God, you know. You know, he knows how you feel anyway. And it's not Linda Huff says one of her comments was God didn't do it. I don't know whether we're getting into whether God did it. It's a, like I said, when your parent dies, it's a cycle, it's a fact of life. If you want to add some scripture, we're not really talking Bible tonight, but it does say in that book that I read that it's appointed unto man once to die. It's going to happen.
It's going to happen.
But it's still not to say that we might as well stop denying the fact that we get mad and we need to vent our anger and our grief on someone. And most of the time we say, God, how could you do? And then we cover it up and try to make it nice by saying, but I'm going to trust him anyhow. It's in his will. I'm going to trust him. And you know, you mad at him.
You know, this is mad at God. You know what I mean? And probably done cussed and everything else. I mean, the thing about it is that we got to keep it real. I think that's how it says sometimes our religious work can hinder the process of grief because you got these religious expectations. Right. You know, I can imagine what, you know, Pastor Tony Evans went through when he lost his wife.
Right.
You know,
but there you go. You got the fact that you lose a parent. You got the fact that you lose a child. I know my child was 14 months old and her small intestine was being sucked into the large intestine. The doctor snatches her out of our arms, rushing her into surgery at 14 months old. And I go to the doctor and I said, well, doc, you know, what's going on? What's the real deal? And he says to me, well, Mr. Austin, just being honest with you, it's a 50-50 chance that you'll never see your child alive again. Man, it felt like somebody gave me a 1-2 punch. And I'm standing in the hall and one of the local pastors was there, came over, said, you know, well, we're praying for you, anything. And I came.
Man, I get it.
To saying, if you don't get it, you don't, when you and again, Doc, you know, you got to deal with your parents, your children, your spouse, and not just your parents, not just your children, not just your spouse, but other people that are significant in your life that leave. And there's no real form. I think that's the thing we're really hitting on tonight, that there's no real formula to how you grieve. It's just that you have to grieve and get the support in your method or way of grieving. Am I right?
Absolutely. You got to get support. And, you know, and I think that part of that support comes through, look, here's one of our problems as African Americans, and I'm just calling space space. We don't want to go to counseling
Okay.
because we don't want folk to think there's something wrong with our head.
Wow.
Huh? We don't, I mean, and mental health issues we got. We don't want to go to the doctor
Mm-hmm.
because we probably got some good reasons why not to go, or why, you know what I mean? We can go in history and pull that out.
You'll find out something. Yeah.
We're disproportionately affected by COVID and all this other stuff because we don't regard the science, or we're suspect of those who are practitioners of medicine. And so we don't want to go to counseling because there's a perception, a persona that says that if I do, people are going to think that I'm crazy or that I'm not strong.
It's especially when you say that. Now you say black, I'll take it a little further. You want to pull a shovel out and dig, I'll dig a little, especially people that say that they're people of faith, because we've been taught that the only counseling you need is, I got one laying around here. Larry Reed said, I got a paper Bible right here. We say that if we are Christians, then we shouldn't be laying on someone's couch telling them, when we all need someone to just say, you know what, I'm about to lose my mind over this. And it hurts. I mean, those that are watching tonight can, you know, pain and the loss of a loved one is real. It's real. And one of the things you said, Doc, that really stuck with me, you can prepare for it all you want. I'm a witness. You can think about all you want. When this one goes, I'm going to do this, when this one goes. But when it happens, man, like I said when I opened the show, when I heard about my pastor, I mean, I done went through so many of these. And you think it's over, and all of a sudden, another. I was listening to. I was riding along, flipping stations the other day when it happened that night, and I'm going through the station, the radio, and man, when I heard Gladys Knight singing, "Neither one of us wants to be the first to say goodbye," man. She got to a line and she said, every time I try, those memories get in my way. I'm not a Pip, but I used to be a Trip. You know, I don't know. I mean, to me, this is needed. This is needed more than coming on the air saying, you know, we see financial blessings coming. Yeah, you're going to get that. But man, we're in a time with COVID, with people dealing with, I think, a lot of hidden sicknesses, diabetes. We're not taking care of ourselves. We're not, and people are losing people left and right. I mean, I went through this, and then as soon as I get the information about my pastor, I'm sitting down in a restaurant. I'm sitting there half grieving with my daughter. Took my daughter out to dinner. And as soon as I leave there, she hops in the car. I hop in my car, get 10 minutes up the road, and I get a call, Dad, we were in a serious accident. A drunk driver hits her. He hits a car. The car hits a car. The car spins around, fishtails around, slams into my daughter. She's there. I mean, this is what we need to discuss, life topics, Doc, and we need counseling. Now, my question is, what do you do when there is no support? When there are, I'm a perfectionist with grammar. When there are no support groups available, what do we do then? When I know I need someone to talk to, but I don't have anyone. I can't talk to my co-workers. I can't really talk to my church members because they're just like me. They think I'm crazy, because now I'm going to really open the can of worms because I don't really need spiritual talk all the time.
Exactly. And, you know, well, first of all, let me start with the last and back up to the first one, is that I don't need spiritual talk right now because we have been dealt and shaped by a paradigm that says that within my religious experience, my spiritual experience, I've got everything that I need. I got the Bible, I got the Holy Spirit, and all these things are true. But we may not have time to talk about it tonight, but there is a way that you can grieve in the context of faith and obey science and deal with all the other stuff and be able to navigate through this. You know, there's a way to do that. You know, the other thing too, I think that, Bishop, is that we have to, when there's nothing available, I mean, there's a lot of stuff that's out there on the internet. There are virtual support groups that are out there as well. There are online that you can Google, loads of research. There's loads of clinical stuff out there, and some of it is are qualifiable. They're not just some kooky people, but there are some people that really are doing this virtually that's out there. That's one way of approaching it is what grief resources are out there. Secondly, and I know that COVID has really put a restriction upon social gatherings and stuff like that, but a lot of churches that may be outside of your faith group have what it's called Grief Share, and it's a faith-based content that they kind of weave into how to deal with their grief. So that I know the Methodist Church does it a lot. I know that there's a Presbyterian church. It may be outside of your faith group, but that's available.
Mm-hmm.
Other than that, there are qualifiable resources. But if someone wants to know, I need to reach out and talk to somebody, but I don't want to talk to anybody that I know.
Mm-hmm.
Then I may be able to find some resources and I can direct your way.
I asked this question, Doc, and this is probably, we've been on here close to an hour, but I want to ask this question before we go, and I hope this isn't the only show that we're going to do. I hope we can do this in a little more detail. If you look at this, let me go back. You got 2020, you got 2020 and 2021. You've got 2019 and 2020. These are the years that people have lost loved ones. Here's someone, they got 2022. That hasn't happened yet, but maybe they meant 20. I'm not sure what year, Miss Long, you meant. Okay, she didn't mean, yeah, she meant 2021. Here's another date, November 1996, May 1997. The absolute worst, my mama, a close friend, my pastor, my aunt. The reason why I asked these, Doc, leading us out of this show and into another show, is there a time frame that we can say that there should be a shifting, or one more date is up here, 2018, 1980, 1980, all of these dates. Now, the earliest one that I've seen so far, I believe, is 1980. So you're talking 41 years ago. Is there a time frame that we should see a decline in our grief?
I mean, first of all, when I explain grief to individuals, I say, number one, let's get this out of our head. Grief is not a time frame, cannot be quantified, neither is it an event. It is a process. And so we have to revise how we look at things, because there's one part of our brain that wants to quantify everything. Well, how long is it going to take? Well, by now I should be over. And that's where we get those comments from people, by now, you should be over this by now. And so people are looking at a time frame and saying that based upon their measurement of length of time, they think that your grief should be over with. Grief is a process. I'm not a mother. Even though I got 5 grown kids, but I have not given birth to a child. But 9 months is the process.
Right.
Sometimes they come sooner than 9 months. It's a process. So I've had individuals that say, Dr. Gardner, I'm really looking for counseling, and my loved one passed a year ago. I treat that person if that person just lost somebody, a month ago, because they're now starting to work on their grief.
Right.
People may look at that and say, well, that's there's something wrong with that person. No, it's when that person is ready, because you never know the person's story. You never know the backstory. I can tell you some stuff, but we can't get into all of it tonight. But I'll save it for the next time.
All right. Well, I'm glad there's going to be a next time. Let's do this, Doc. We'll go on this note. There's always one of the things that we should do. One of the things that we should do is the comment says, don't forget there's a fallout involved with the death of a loved one. For example, it's like a domino effect. Then you got to deal with family. My coworkers, uncle passed away. He said less than a day later they're fighting over all of that. There's an effect. We'll talk about all of that. How family members don't handle grief the same way. As we go, Doc, it's good for us to feel at peace. We have to love one another, because you're going to find an area in your life when you look back. Like we said when we started, if I just had 5 more minutes, and there's one thing you need to do, just realize that no matter what happened, I've done all I could for that individual, and that should prompt us to do all that we can for one another. Is that true?
That's true.
Yes, sir.
That's true. It's absolutely true, man. And and we need to practice being kind, and we'll mention that again next week. Be kind to people that are grieving. You never know their story.
You never know their story. That's right. Let's do this, Doc. We looked at this clip. We listen, guys. I hope you appreciate Dr. Gardner taking time out of his schedule. He is not here around the corner in North Carolina. He's way out in Phoenix, Arizona, all the way to the other side of the country. As I said, he has an earned doctorate. He has his PhD in social justice. He is a great man of God, a great friend. He knows his stuff. And we didn't just come on here and start talking. We met before and we talked and we went over what to show you. And we started to play this clip, Doc. Let's play the clip we decided to hold on, because I think it really means something. This clip is it shows us how we should love one another, cherish every minute. And when they're gone, hey, realize, you know what? The best thing I did. This is from the movie, The Karate Kid. His dad, Mr. Miyagi's father, had passed.
Yeah. That's why he left overseas to learn.
When my father died, I spent a lot of time thinking I wasn't such a great son. Like maybe I could have listened a little more, spent some more time with them together. I felt so guilty, like he did everything for me and I didn't do anything for him. And then one day I realized I did the greatest thing for him before he died. I was there with him, and I held his hand and said goodbye.
Wow.
That was very touching, very touching, very touching. Listen, Doc, the hour's getting late out there on the West Coast, and you see the appreciation of coming in for you. I appreciate you, my friend, that you took time for this. And those that are watching, we're not finished. We're going to do this again. As my mom used to say, if the Lord willing, nothing will happen. We'll get back together. Give you time to get your thoughts together, your questions, your comments, what have you. We're going to get through this together. We got someone that knows what he's talking about. His name is on the screen. I'm sure he wouldn't mind if you want to reach out to him, Follow him on social media, Dr. Stephen E. Gardner. Let's get through this, y'all. We can do it. We can do it. All of us are going through it, and we're going to handle it in a different way, but we're going to get through it. Doc, would you come back next week? And
let's do it, man.
all right, let's do it. Let's do it. Let's do it next week. Everyone be on the lookout for our show next week. Doc, keep me in your prayers, man. Just got word that homegoing is next Thursday, and so I've got to, the thing is, it's about a 7-hour drive that I'll be in the car by myself with my thoughts, and so I need your prayers. I don't know how I'm going to, I don't know, but I'm going to get through it. Not many people impact you. I'll say this, Doc. I was sitting in a hotel room one night, and I was for a service, and I had on my white shirt, and I spilled something on my shirt, and I called my mom, how'd I get this out? And, they gave me the remedy for Sprite and all, and it didn't. I just rubbed, and that stain wouldn't come out, and I rubbed, and she said, what is it? I said, it's some kind of pizza sauce from the pizza. She said, baby, some stains just don't come out.
Wow.
And when I think about my pastor, Donald D. Otterbridge, all I can think about, there's some people that impact your life in such a way, some stains just don't come out.
Some stains don't come out. Wow.
Just don't come out. And so keep me in your prayers.
Mm-hmm.
I appreciate you. Those that are watching, thank you so much for joining us tonight. Do me a favor. Hit the replay button. Do a watch party. As I told you before, you can do a watch party and just hit it, let it play, and then you can leave it. It'll ask you, do you want to leave it? Leave it. It'll be playing while you're surfing Facebook. Someone may see this broadcast tonight, and then they won't see it, and Dr. Gardner will become the most famous doctor in the world. They won't see it and recognize my face. But if they will see it and give them the strength to make it through a hard time of loss, then it'll be worthwhile. Would y'all do that for me? Share it. Hit the share button. Let's keep playing it. Let's get these views up. If this man right here was Reverend Ike and he was talking about you can't lose with the stuff I use, we get 1,000. Listen, tonight was more valuable. I don't know about you all, but it was valuable to me. And I appreciate you, Doc. It's 9:04 on the East Coast. It's 6:04 out there on the West Coast. You got more time in the day than we. It's
7:04.
7:04. I can't never get it right with the 3 hours or whatever. It's still, you got enough time to go to Walmart. We shut down over here. We'll see you next week, my friend.
See you next week.
All right. Thank you, buddy. Thank Dr. Gardner. We thank Dr. Gardner so much for joining us tonight. I thank you all for joining us tonight. Grief is a thing we're going to get through. It may take some time, but we're going to get through it. 1984. I'm hanging plastic over a window, had a razor blade. And as I pulled the blade down, the blade hit my finger. I kept hanging the plastic. I kept hanging it. Blood just dropping all over the floor. I had no idea because the cut was so fine. All of a sudden, I saw the blood and it dawned on me, where's this blood coming from? And I saw my finger. It was blood everywhere. I had sliced my finger in half, took some Vaseline, globbed it on there, wrapped it up with a sock, ran to the hospital. They stitched my finger back on my hand. The doctor numbed the wrong place, y'all. He numbed down here and started stitching. I'm hollering. He had to stick that needle in there, numbing it, sewed my finger back together. 1984. Here it is. I don't know how many years, you do the math. 37 years later, my finger doesn't hurt anymore, but I still have a scar. When you lose a loved one, over time, that pain goes away just a little bit, but you always have a scar, something to remind you of the pain. That's what we're talking about. How do we handle the scar? How do we handle the pain? We went to see the doctor tonight. The doctor came to see us, rather, and he talked about it. I want you to join us next week. Next week, we're going to come right back together with Dr. Gardner, and we're going to talk about grief and how to handle it. I appreciate you all more than you ever know. You mean the world to me. Never forget that. If I don't make it the next week, know that you mean the world to me. If something happened, we can't get together ever again. Remember, that you mean the world to me and that I love you, and there's nothing you can do about it. You made some mistakes. Yes, you have. And so have I. Yes, I have. But through it all, God has saw us through it, and he is building us up. And we have lost. We've suffered heartbreak. We've suffered heartache, but we're still here and we're still going, and we're going to survive. I'll see you next week right here on Signs of the Time on Facebook. I'll see you right here on Signs of the Time on our YouTube channel, Roku channel. Listen, if you want to get a topic or a guest on here, send us a message and we will have a show based on you. Be safe this week. Be safe. Before I go, please, my friends and brother, keep all of our friends in Texas in prayer. They're going through. One of my brothers that comes on here, Bishop Abram Dixon, and I talk, and they're down there with no lights and have to stay in a hotel, no water. Let's keep them in prayer during this difficult time, because it may be us real soon. Stay safe, stay warm, enjoy your weekend. Hey, we'll see you next week. And remember, I love you. There's nothing you can do about it. And as I said years ago, God is watching over you. We'll see you right here next week on Sign of the Times.
Hold me close till I get up. Time is barely on our side. I don't wanna waste what's left. The storms we chase are leading us.